Hi, this is Amir Anzur, and I'm with a special guest and a client of mine, actually, Richard Saes. And he's got a very special story because what he does is he's 57 years old. He's in super peak shape, and he helps people get in shape with the power of movement. And his unique thing is he lost one of his legs a few decades ago. And so he has one leg, and yet he's in super shape. And a lot of people that have some sort of a disability, they use it as an excuse to not take their physical health to that next level. And Richard now, since joining my program, is working on his book to tell about his story, but then is also, coaching people that are looking to get their health and their body in shape. So Richard, just tell us a little bit about your story and your accident and what happened and what you were doing before that, and then what happened and what's happened since then.
I lost my leg in '95 I had a motorcycle, and I had an altercation with a large 38-ton lorry, and my leg got chopped off on the road. I made it, but they reckoned it was touch or go. Prior to losing my leg, I was a semi-pro athlete and I was entrepreneurial. I had my own business that I was always involved in, investing in this, buying property there, developing it. So not related to sport, but I always had the semi-pro as my sport, which was one of the main functions that I threw myself into in life because it's a passion of mine. So when my leg got chopped off, it was, as you can imagine, quite a big impact on the direction of my life. So when I came out of hospital, I had to do some thinking and decide, how do I want to come to terms with the new paradigm? And the options were essentially do nothing, allow other people to guide you, or take control and manage your own recovery and development. I chose the third. So I started looking into how to become my body to become much better adept at managing to function daily and try to get back to some vestige of my physical capability before losing my leg. How could I do that? I started yoga. I never in a million years thought I would ever do yoga. I was a young man who was full of beans. Doing yoga is something which I mistakenly thought was for old people or ladies. I realized I was entirely mistaken. Anyway, that was my start of coming to terms with the new paradigm physically.
Awesome. So 95, how long did you give yourself to grieve, and sort of how does one deal with losing a leg? I mean, that's quite a big blow to the system. How long did you feel sorry for yourself before you picked yourself up? Did you go through a period of depression?
Not really because of my leg, in all honesty. It was challenging, but my life previously had to some degree prepared me before losing my leg. So I already had the mental skills, for want of a better term, to look at all experiences, both good and bad, in life and understand that there are lessons to be learned. And always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking survival is about adaptation. So you might be very, for example, you might make a lot of money and become a multimillionaire and have reached your pinnacle in what one was thinking about. But then your relationship with the family might be a disaster. And what one needs to take from that is one needs to learn a different set of skills to have a successful family life. Or equally, as in with my clients, they're business owners, and many of them have neglected their health and their conditioning, their fitness. And they understood once they reached a certain financial point in their life that they started to realize that they weren't going to be able to enjoy it for very long if they didn't start to take some responsibility for their own health and their own fitness, like reducing on their drug or smoking, eating better food rather than finding the excuses because they're working all night, starting to be more active instead of being on an aircraft and in meetings or behind a computer screen, and so on and so forth. So having the understanding always in my own mind that every situation is an opportunity to learn a new set of skills which will equip me for life better.
Okay, so, and yeah. So when you had this situation, you adopted quite well, yes, relatively quickly. Like you didn't go through a depression. You didn't say like, oh, why this lorry came in, and you didn't beat yourself up.
6 days. It took me to sort my head out. I didn't speak to anybody. I needed to sort my head out. Did I want to live or did I want to die? Once I made the decision that my head was sufficiently compos mentis, I then contacted my mother, friends, family to inform them I was in hospital and I'd had a bit of an accident. In fact, funnily enough, I never call my mother on Mother's Day, and I called her on Mother's Day and I informed her I'm in the hospital and I've lost a leg, and she didn't really register because, you know, in my own head, I'd already come to terms with it. So for me, I felt a bit foolish that I had been involved in something like this. So I said it sort of in maybe a jolly way. And then when after a few moments she registered and she said, "Stop joking." I said, "I'm not. I really am in hospital with my legs off." I'll tell you something else funny. When I was lying in the road, a lady came. She stopped her car and she came over to me and knelt by me. And I asked if I could borrow her phone because I wanted to call a friend because I didn't think I'd make it. I wanted him to get my personal effects, you know, my wallet, my diary, etc., because I was worried that somebody might steal them. And this is in the road with my leg off.
Wow. And were you married at the time, or
no?
were you...
Okay. I was in a relationship, but my partner at the time, she was in America on a scholarship. She was German, and she was doing a tennis scholarship and an academic scholarship.
Okay, so you weren't like, oh, how's this going to impact my family, my relationships, or...
No, I was 28 years old.
Okay.
I mean, you know, there was no chance. I had a life to lead before I could even consider the possibility of being responsible for other people. I was 28.
You think you being an athlete beforehand, what kind of athlete were you? What were you doing?
I did two sports. My second sport, which was more of a club run, I was a 400-meter runner. My main sport, which I was on the short list for the GB Olympic team, was judo.
Wow! So you were almost on the Olympic judo team for the United Kingdom. Wow! And well, so, do you think because you were an athlete, it helped you deal with this situation?
I think so. And also, I was at the time I had my accident, I was in what we call the Territorial Army. So it's like a reserve, but not exactly. It's where you go, you commit 1 day a week in the evening, you go on 1 weekend a month, and you have 1 week camp a year. And I was in the airborne, the parachute regiment, which wear red berets and they jump out of air. So
Wow.
you don't really get paid. It's a hobby, but you're properly trained so that in the event the Britain is in a war like in Iraq or Afghanistan, I could have been sent there, for example.
Wow. And so then what happened? You just lost your leg. How long till you could go back into fitness and start doing fitness stuff? Like you said, yoga was like 6 days after, or?
No, 6 days after, I contacted everybody to let them know my situation because nobody had heard from me for 6 days. But I didn't want to have to talk to anybody because I knew I would have to deal with other people's emotional responses. And first, I had to understand where I was at and what my how I felt in my own skin, because I knew I then would have a responsibility to the people I was talking with. So it took me 6 days. When did I start exercising again? In hospital. I had an epidural in my spine, which was morphine, I think, whatever they give ladies when they're pregnant. And I was doing press ups on the floor by my bed, chin ups on the door frame, because they've got a small door frame, and sit ups. But it was awkward because I had this tube in my spine and a box. So I would unhitch the box from the bed and put it on the floor next to me so I could do press ups and sit ups. And then I used to put the box in my pajamas around my waist and tie it so I could do chin ups on the door frame. And it kept me sane. Physical movement is healthy for anybody. Because I've experienced this so much in my life, it's what I call therapy. Some people take drugs because they have mental problems. I don't. I take exercise, and it makes me, I find a balance with it. It balances my, if I'm feeling bad, I do some exercise, I feel better.
Wow. And so what were you doing as a living before the exercise accident? And then what did you end up doing afterwards?
I was I was an entrepreneur, so I was always looking at small businesses, bought a small property, some people developed it, sold it. I was involved in setting up a small workshop, which was for computer generated designs, CAD, which then could do a small run of, say, 2,000 units. And then if they were successful, it didn't matter what it was for machinery. And if it was successful, that whatever was designed, I wasn't the designer, I raised the money for that because I knew a superb designer who I understood how good they were. And I got the investors and I got the designer. So I did things like that. My first real business, successful business, was horse races. So I raised capital, set up a company, and bought 2-year-olds for 4 or 5 furlong race, which is flat, it's sprinting. And I made enough money to buy my first property through that. And I had a deal with a trainer called Dr. Scargill in Newmarket, which is the centre for horse racing training in GB in the UK. That was my first major business I did.
So how, like, it seemed to me like that you took it quite well, this whole losing a leg, and you lost all the leg, right? Both above the knee and below the knee.
Yeah, I've got if you take your thigh and you chop it through the middle.
Okay. And so what do you use, like a crutch, or do you to get around?
I have a prosthesis, so a
Okay.
fake leg. I just walk everywhere.
So can people tell that you've got it or
I
not?
always wear shorts
Why do you always wear shorts?
because I'm always doing physical things which require me to move around a lot. And because when my leg was chopped off, um, they had. I don't want to be too graphic, but essentially, I can't move my hip properly because when you're the motorcycle I was on, my leg was very bent. So at the knee, the lower part of the leg is coming backwards, which is a typical racing motorcycle. You're on it, you're squat over it. And I hit the lorry through the middle of my knee and it ripped the whole of the lower part of my leg clean off. Like imagine a chicken and you take the chicken leg off and it took most of the underside of my thigh. So when I sat up after my leg hurt, I sat up and looked down. The femur, which is the main thigh bone in the leg, was sticking out the end, and it was clean like a roast lamb.
Wow.
So, and that's when I realized my leg was, because it was very painful. But that's why I sat up, because I wanted to see what was wrong with my leg, and there was no leg. So I lay back down and just wanted to control myself because, I feel the difference between animals and humans is that we have the capacity to override pain. It's
Wow.
mind over matter.
So what did you think about that pain? Like, is it mind over matter? Like, how did you get through the pain? Like, what
Well,
happens?
it's very interesting you asked that. While I was laying in the road, the first thing that came to me was, now is my opportunity. That's again me finding opportunity in every situation. Now is the opportunity for me to prove to myself I'm not a coward and that I can walk the walk. And I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to start crying. I'm not going to pass out or panic. This is an opportunity for me to prove to myself that I'm able to hold a conversation with people, make a phone call, and contain myself in a dignified manner. I also thought no woman would ever want me because, I also thought that I wouldn't be able to defend myself because obviously I'm lying in the road. So silly things that young men um, think about, I guess, physical defense, a woman feeling that this is a man worthy of something. I felt I wouldn't be because now I was kaput.
Were you able to attract women post the accident?
Yeah, very fortunately, yes. In fact, when I eventually called my partner at the time, she was in America. I think it was after 6 days, and I called everybody on that day. I said to her, look, we're young. You have your life ahead of you. And unfortunately, my life isn't going to be going in a direction that we thought it would be. So I think it's best if we terminate our relationship because I don't know what's going to happen to my life now. Whereas you're young, you're beautiful, you've got a scholarship academically and a sports scholarship to study in America. So, but she actually came over and said she wants to make the choice herself. So she came over and we stayed together. And I asked her what would have caused you not to want to be with me, and she said, if you weren't the same person, if you became collapsed or became a victim, or you had a basically, if I wasn't me, and that that was very good for my self-confidence, of course, because I had a knock. When we have a knock, we often feel we take it in oh my God, I'm not good enough. It's inevitable. Most people do anyway, it seems to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what happened to your self-confidence? Because they say sometimes that people that win the lottery, they often go back to the same level of happiness pre the lottery within a year or two. Like if they were miserable, even after they win like $10 million, like 2-3 years later, they'll start being miserable again. And people that go into becoming a quadriplegic or having some sort of massive accident, they also go back to that same level of happiness. Do you find that happened, or do you find that you became less happier than you would have been, or do you think you were at that level of happiness maybe when you were like at 27 at the age of 30 post accident?
I feel that my accident in over the medium to long term probably boosted the rate at which I changed and adapted for the better overall, because it forced me to have to deal with more difficulties immediately in the present. If there's an old saying, you can inherit a throne or you can earn a throne. The people that inherit wealth or power tend to be quite weak because they never really have no challenges. Real challenge is like when you make a sword in a blast furnace, you hammer it and you heat it. If you do that with somebody's character, with their very core, and they learn to adapt and overcome, people start to know that this person is resilient. They're the sort of person you want to hang out with when the going gets tough. And in modern society, a lot of people don't seem to have these opportunities to challenge themselves. For want of a better phrase, it's challenge themselves and overcome. And I find that exciting because it's an adventure. Look, our mother gives us life. All of us are going to die. It's the in-between which we have an opportunity to make some choices. And for me, I see it as an adventure. I mean, for example, every day when I came out from hospital, after exactly 7 weeks, every day for a year, I went back to the spot where I had my accident because I lost so much blood. The road had darkened. And I went back there and focused on that spot because for me, the way I find of overcoming my insecurities and my fears is to face them and conquer them. That's my personality. I'm not saying that's right for everybody, but that's how I choose to live my life, and I choose that myself.
And then you went into fitness and health, right? So you started.
No,
yeah.
Not until 2010.
So you went into property business. So tell us what happened from 95 to 2010. What did you do?
I went into real estate development in Northeast Europe, and I made a fortune. And I lost it in the financial crash.
Okay, and then what did you do?
I came back to the UK.
How did you take that mentally to lose a fortune?
Well, I was early 40s, crippled, and essentially I didn't have a family. So again, you start to think, what woman will ever find a man who now is, crippled, middle-aged, and has no wealth or no career prospects? So I found an opportunity and I lived it. I would sleep in my car between clients. If they rang me when they got back on their private jets, the wealthy customers, a friend of mine had a fantastic network of clients. He was a personal trainer in Kensington. And we've been friends for years and we trained together a lot. We really connected there. And he was a semi-pro athlete as well. And he gave me an opportunity to subcontract with his clients, and he would then pay me a percentage of what they paid him for if he went on holiday with his wife and children, or he had two clients who wanted the same time slot, or because he didn't live in central London, he lived in Surrey, so it would take him a little bit of time he'd come up to London every day. If they came back late and they couldn't sleep because they'd been in Hong Kong or somewhere, they would then contact me at 2 a.m. for a session. So I'd go round to the house. So I worked any work that he would give me, I did. And I said the first few months, don't pay me because I'm learning. But he said, no, I've got to pay you. Because I felt it was like I was at school. He had afforded me such a great opportunity. I was willing to just have the scraps from his table rather than him pay me, because I made my own mess by taking too many risks. And now I was down in the gutter again.
Wow.
So that's how I built that's how I got into personal training.
And so you built up a personal training business? And how did you go about getting clients?
Word of mouth. It's the only way. I've never advertised. I've got a bit of an unusual niche.
What's your niche?
There is a growing body of evidence that if you perform certain daily rituals, you can increase the quality and longevity of your life. For example, being outdoors and active for about an hour a day, having cold showers or ice baths daily, eating non-processed, not chemical food, don't take drugs, etc. Try to make sure that you don't have too much fat in your body. And one of these things in movement is to do with developing your mitochondria, because the more mitochondria you have in your body, the higher your basal metabolic rate. Now, people would think metabolic rate, okay, the rate at which your body can burn energy. Your basal metabolic rate is the rate at which your body burns energy even when you're asleep and resting. And the higher it is in a healthy person, the younger your body is functioning. So children have very high metabolic rates. Old people have very low metabolic rates, as in general. Of course, there are exceptions, but pretty much 99% of the time, that statement is true. And then when you get old enough and you die, you've got a zero metabolic rate. So I've been studying under a certain guy who's most in the world, who are top athletes and Olympic teams would argue that he's probably the premium strength and conditioning advisor to coaches and doctors in the world. And he's teaches a form of biochemistry in order to understand this mechanism of how to develop mitochondria in the muscles, in the cells. And you can do it for endurance and you can do it for strength. And I specialize in the strength. And what's so beautiful about it is 3 times a week, the actual workout itself will never be more than about 20 or 30 minutes. Of course, you do certain mobility drills before and breathing exercises, but the actual conditioning workout takes no more than 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And it will actually increase your basal metabolic rate, which means your body in all the stats will be younger than you actually are. There's absolutely, the science is there.
So when you train up clients, they tend to be over the age of 40 or?
Yes.
So you work with them for a 3-month period. How does it work?
Indefinitely.
Yeah.
Because they have the resources.
But you can teach someone that 30-minute exercise. Is it the same thing 3 times a week, or
Yes.
is it different every time?
The only variable is the amount of sets.
Yeah. Okay. And then and it gives them flexibility in the body. It gives them strength in the body, and they only need 90 minutes a week. 120 minutes a week.
The exercise itself strengthens the heart in terms of stroke volume because it's cardiovascular. But at the same time, you're strengthening your connective tissue, your muscles, and your bones, because you're actually doing movement under load. So you're not just running. Running is fantastic as long as you don't go above a certain point for a very long period, because that's very good for your stroke volume of your heart. In other words, your heart becomes very supple and bigger, and it's fantastic. But you can achieve the same effect there, plus the soft tissue, bone density, and muscle strength, which you can't with cardiovascular exercise. So we combine them in one workout. And that is unusual in that we do it in such a way that, if I can draw the analogy of a combustible engine, when you turn on the ignition of your car and you drive, it may be very technologically fantastic, but it will generate byproducts which are bad. If you train the way I've been taught, and I train people, you hardly have any of these byproducts which damage you at a cellular level. Whereas normal, conventional, for example, circuit training will create high ammonia, high acidity, free radicals, etc., which damage the body at a cellular level, and therefore, over time, will reduce your basal metabolic rate.
And can you do this all from your home?
Yeah, no problem at all. You need hardly any equipment.
So you don't need any equipment, or do you need some equipment?
Very little. Any clients, I get them to buy 2 or 3 kettlebells. So you might have to spend £200 and they'll last you for the rest of your life.
Okay, kettlebell. When you have a kettlebell, do you not go heavier and heavier every time, or?
No, you can slowly, but it takes time because the movements that I train people are very complex.
Okay. Okay, and can you teach this via Zoom or?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Easily.
And so your target, like, who's like the oldest customer you've had, and who's the youngest?
89.
89. So even people in the 89-year-olds are going through this and learning and benefiting. Obviously, they have a little bit less range of motion than maybe a 40.
No.
Okay.
No. If you do mobility drills before the actual workout, and I cover that too, I can give somebody a whole workout. Some clients I literally have dedicated 1 or 2 workouts a week, if we do 5 or 6 workouts a week, just to mobility drills.
Wow. And how long have you been doing this?
2010. I've been doing it professionally.
So this whole mobility workout, you've been focused on that for the last 13 years or so?
Sorry, these whole doing personal training, yes.
Okay.
Not just mobility, it's the whole plethora of movement.
And what do you think stops people from getting into personal training and doing it consistently. What's the difference between a man like you who's 57, I believe, and in good shape, and someone who's out of shape and not, doesn't do it regularly?
Lack of knowledge. Like most things, most people have no clue about what's good for them and what's not. Most people have no clue. For example, let's take running. I'm a running coach too. I trained under a man called Lee Saxby. So I went on a couple of his courses and actually trained under him. You Google who Lee Saxby is, or you'll find out he's, according to Harvard University, one of the best running coaches in the world, and he has his own program. Running is something that humans do naturally. It's walking and running are pretty much identical. The only difference is cadence, so how many foot strikes per minute, and whether you have a heel strike or a forefoot strike. Yeah. The result of that is that most people think they can just go out and start running if they need to do more exercise. However, statistically, most people, when they start running, injure themselves within 12 months of them starting running. The result of that is they don't tend to go back to running again because they've got no idea what it was that caused the injury. And they, thinking, well, if I'm going to go out and run again, I'm going to get injured again. And I think because of that, people, they have the same attitude when they go to a gym or do some exercise. They think, oh, it should be fairly easy. I've seen it on TV or I've read about it, or my next door neighbor, or when I was at school. But they don't seem to get the desired results, because when I go to the gym and I see all the people with lovely bodies, they've got one thing in common. They're all of them, bar a tiny percentage, are under 30. And as I never get bored of telling people, you can eat terribly, you cannot sleep, you can smoke drugs, drink until you drop, and still look amazing in your 20s. If you do that at my age, you have a heart attack or a stroke, however conditioned you are. And I'm conditioned. So anybody can look pretty good in their 20s, whatever they do. But you look at them in their 30s and you can already see that they're not really on their top game. And rule of thumb, most people in their 40s start to look terrible. And then when they go into their 50s, they tend to have medical conditions, which require ongoing medication for the rest of their life and or surgery. And that's the rule of thumb across the board.
So how can we avoid that?
Education and getting people to be a bit more active. So going out daily for a walk, walking to the shop. There's a thing called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's a little, I can't remember what they call it when you've just got the letters, but anyway.
Acronym? Yeah. Acronym, maybe? Yeah.
Maybe I can't remember the word, but anyway, what it is it's when people go to work, but they wear their trainers, for example, and they walk up the stairs rather than take the lift or the elevator. They walk, they get off, instead of going in the car to the shops, they walk to the shops. Or if they normally take a bus, they get off at the stop before, rather than the stop at their work or their home. So they can then generate some activity into their day without having to wear sports kit, make a plan, go to the gym, because that costs time. It costs money joining a gym. And when you're in Western culture, where everything is basically going for 24 hours a day, a lot of people don't have the headspace. They're just trying to make the rent, look after the kids, get the kids to school, get to work, etc., etc. So being active is the first step.
And can people talk about losing weight? Like, can they lose weight doing this program of yours?
Losing weight is a really people think that losing weight is about getting on the scales and the number gets smaller. Unfortunately, exercise or activity doesn't tend to end in that outcome, because when you're active, your muscles get used, and when they get used, they get stronger and denser and possibly bigger. Therefore, you actually gain weight. You may well lose fat, though. And that's what I think most people are talking about when they say they want to lose weight. What they really mean is they want to lose fat. So if you want to lose fat that you've already got, you're going to have to normally do a little more than just be a bit more active. Because normally it's taken years to get to the position one is in. So if you want to get rid of the excess fat and the stiffness in the joints, or the back pain, or the hip pain, or the knee pain, you normally have to do more of an intervention in your life in order to get your life back on track, whatever back on track is defined as according to the individual. And that normally means being a bit more careful about how you approach your food and stimulants, trying to make sure you have time to sleep properly, because when you sleep, that's the time when your body recovers, when you lose the fat, when your muscles get stronger, etc. This is so important. And then, of course, activity.
Okay, but what for me is really encouraging to hear is you're saying that we only need 30 minutes a day for 3 times a week, and then you can go about doing the rest of your things. Obviously eat healthy and all that, but that's the only exercise and motion. Does that include warm up?
The warm up would be a mobility drills, and I have a short series of mobility drills which take about 10 minutes. There are 3 of them, and you repeat them 3 times around in a circle. They're not designed to tire you. They're designed to activate your joints, the soft tissue, in the correct way, increase the blood supply so that your body is prepped for the workout.
And what do you think about doing the workout and having a coach on Zoom versus having a coach in real life? Is that much of a difference, or?
It doesn't really matter. It really depends on how good the coach's ability is in connecting with the individual. So, I'm a personal trainer. So therefore I need to offer a personal service. And maybe my manner, maybe my way of approaching things doesn't work for X, but maybe it works very well for Y.
Mm-hmm. And so and you work on busy executives.
That's the best.
Over the age of 40.
That's the best, because they have the resources. They've tried many different methods of exercising, personal trainers, swimming, tennis, whatever. And the outcomes that they've achieved, they have not been happy with.
And how long do you think it takes to start seeing results if we put in 3 half hours?
3 sessions a week, taking into account that they didn't have, one of the other big issues with the older people is they tend to have ailments, knee problem, back problem. But outside of ailments, and if they're not being ridiculous in terms of going out and getting drunk every night, so they're and usually they wouldn't be because they're business executives. They own their own businesses. I would say 3 months will really give you, not only will they feel better inside their own body and their mind, they'll feel better. Because remember, how we interface with life is through our hormones. And secondly, they will notice improvements in their body, not weight loss. But I always recommend to people, try on clothing that was tight around your waist, for example. So they could try on a pair of trousers, or a lady tries on a dress which was tight. And and if it gets tight across their shoulders, like, that's not a bad thing as long as it's loose around the waist. Because normally people put weight on around their waist, or maybe around their hips if it's a lady.
And is there a difference between coaching women and men?
Scientifically, no, there isn't. But the individual it's really about the personality and the experiences of the individual. So you can apply exactly the same nutrition, but as long as they don't have any medical conditions already. But I'm not a medical person. I'm not a therapist at all. I deal with software, how people move, and giving them programs how to move in order to make their bodies healthier and stronger through movement. I don't deal with medical conditions at all.
And how do you think about people? What advice would you have to people, like, you've gone through a serious accident, and it seems to me that you didn't let it impact your life. You just went on about it, apart from the first 6 days. Like, what advice would you have for them to do this? Like, you're a personal trainer, you're training people. Is it even an advantage for you to do it with one leg, or not so?
I haven't found it's an advantage. I've often been quite self-conscious by the fact that I have one leg. It limits my ability physically. So when I skied with one leg, I couldn't ski to the same standard, intensity, or duration that I could when I had 2 legs. For example, I can't run because I can't move my hip properly for reasons we talked about earlier. I was a mountaineer and I did some ice climbing, so I can't do that. Now, I'm not saying people can't do that with one leg, but because I can't move my hip properly, it's been a bit of a hassle. And also the damage on clothing, because you've got a metal lump, and the way you walk, I've had to adjust and learn what it is works best for my body. For example, I only purchase and wear barefoot running shoes because they give me the greatest sense of stability of any type of footwear. And bearing in mind, I'm less stable than a bipedal person, somebody with 2 legs. I need as much advantage to mitigate that weakness that I already have, in that I'm not as stable. So there are things which it has impacted. But I can fit into a smaller bed than most adults, because I take my leg off.
Okay. And do you find people that have gone through a disability that you see them and they just feel sorry for themselves for years at a time? Have you come across that, and how can we help that?
I don't really have any contact with people in my position at all, and haven't done.
Okay. So most...
Yeah, for almost my entire time like this.
Almost all your clients have no disability, right? Like
no, not almost. All.
Oh, wow. Okay, so all your clients are 2 legs, etc. And then
Normal people.
and they're all usually over the age of 40 or so.
Well, I think we talked briefly before, and I also used to train a certain clique of client who were semi-pro athletes, and they would get sent to me specifically because of repetitive injuries, and I would try and figure out what they were doing wrong, and that's all related to compensation patterns.
Wow. And now you're coaching people, and you're coaching people from their bedrooms, from their hotel rooms, wherever they are in the world, you can coach them, right? Now, if someone wanted to connect with you, how could they connect to you? What's a website, or how could they get in touch with you?
My website, I think you have. It's my name, saes-fitness.com.
Yeah.
And or they can plug my name into Google, Richard Saes, or they can contact you. You very kindly said are helping me. You would be able to maybe pass them through to me if you have anybody, and which would be lovely.
Perfect. And you're also now working on your book, your first book. What
Correct.
is it about, and what do you hope to get out of it?
Well, it's really about laying down from my mind on paper my journey, a little bit about before my accident, and then how my accident changed the direction of my life and what I've done and the decisions I've come to from that point.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to reading that. Richard Saes from Saes Fitness. If anyone wants to get in touch, just simply get in touch with me and I'll forward on the details. But thank you so much. That's really an inspirational story. And what I'm getting really hopeful for is that you only need 30 minutes a day for 3 days a week, and you can be in good physical condition within 90 days or so. And this is really, really helpful for people over the age of 40, especially, don't have time, busy executives. You get in touch with Richard Saes. He's the best in the field. He can really help you. Try him out. And this is something that's really going to change your life. And number one thing above wealth, above relationship, is health, right? So once you have your health, you have a much happier and higher quality of life. So thank you so much, Richard Saes.
Thank you. Thank you, Amir.